one of the things that we have loved about our new life in Switzerland is the night skies here. It's so dark and they seem so clear, and we go out of our house at night and we're just overawed by the stars. And that combined with the amazing mountains, I just don't think you can help yourself but to ask that question: where did this come from? How is this the way that it is? And they're such important questions, you know? How do we get to be here? Why are we as we are? And by the middle of the 20th century, there was a sort of growing confidence that science was on the cusp of being able to answer those questions. The so-called theory of everything, a sort of singular framework which would explain all of the aspects of the universe. And in the years that followed, we have been in a golden age of science. The bounds of our understanding have expanded beyond our imagination. But the consequence of that is that we now know far more than we ever did about that which we don't know. That so many of those great questions we now realize are further out of reach than ever. As Einstein famously and presciently said, the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. Let me give you some examples. We believe that the universe is 13.8 billion years old. In fact, it's more than that, but that's what is observable. And we know that it had a beginning, but we have no way of knowing what initiated that beginning and where that came from. There is simply no facility within our current scientific framework to explain that. Or, for example, another good example, we know that the universe works consistently here and on the other side of the universe according to consistent natural laws that seem fine-tuned and perfectly balanced so that the order of the universe can emerge. But where did those laws come from? How is it that they are so fine-tuned? Or another example, we know that life emerged at one point in history, but how is it possible that inorganic material became organic? How did the inanimate become animate? We have no beginning of an answer to that question. Or to scale up to a different level altogether, as far as we know, human beings are the only creatures in the universe able to sort of reflect on themselves, to be conscious. And yet that consciousness, its origins or how it even works, is a mystery to us. And so it strikes me that the most fundamental questions, where we came from, how we got here, what we are, we have no answer to without God. And so I'd like us to return to one of the most famous books of the Bible, a book which has been debated and disputed for centuries, and yet has shaped us in profound ways. It has sort of haunted our imagination and our understanding of the world. Its ideas have shaped us. Think of some of the phrases that come from it. Let there be light. Or the Garden of Eden, or the Promised Land, or forbidden fruit, or ashes to ashes, or my brother's keeper, or be fruitful and multiply, or becoming one flesh, or fire and brimstone, or the breath of life, and I could go on. This astonishing ancient text has spoken profoundly to us in the past, and I would like to suggest that it is perfectly capable of doing so in the present. What it is not, though, is a scientific text, and I think often confusion comes from that. It is a theological one. It speaks first and foremost of God. It is a text which predates the scientific method by, 2,500 years. And yet, the first modern scientists believed that by exploring the universe, by looking closely at creation, they were exploring the mind of God. Science is not inherently at odds with religion. Many preeminent scientists are believers. Some religion is anti-science. Some scientists are anti-religion. But modern science is built on this apparently inexplicable reality that the universe is comprehensible, constant, measurable, and can be understood. So let's look closely at this first book of the Bible, which we call Genesis. I'd like to do this over the next weeks. I'd like to spend the rest of the term looking at the different stories in Genesis. But we start here at chapter 1, and I'd like this to sort of be an introduction to what lies ahead. The name Genesis comes from its opening line, in the beginning. And Genesis is the Greek word for beginning. This is a book which speaks about our origins, about our beginnings, and why we are the way that we are. But the most important thing is that opening line. In the beginning, God. In the beginning, God. Genesis doesn't offer proof of God or evidence of God. Instead, it presents God as the origin, the source, the ultimate answer to the questions that we have. God stands over and above creation. He creates beginnings because he creates time, and he exists outside of time and space. Some suggest that belief in God means that you don't therefore have to ask any more questions. But on the contrary, believing in God allows us to study the universe because we believe there are answers, and this can be comprehended. Science is possible because of God. And verse 1 continues, God created the heavens and the earth. And I don't know if you've got any sense of the scope of that as a verse. That when we stand looking at the night sky and we catch a glimpse just of one small corner of this vast, incomprehensibly vast universe, we're speaking of a God who created all of that. If we are right, that verse speaks of a vast and massive period of time. That we cannot fathom the scale of the universe. But if that's true, how much less can we fathom the majesty of God? Louis Pasteur, famous French scientist, said, "The more that I study nature, the more I stand amazed at the work of the Creator." Isn't that wonderful? So, 3 reflections from this passage. 3 reflections which I think are really helpful and kind of lay a foundation for what lies ahead. The first is this. In verse 2, he says, "Now the earth was formless and empty." And so you've got that picture of a God who's created a vast, almost endless universe. And yet at the heart of it, he creates the earth. But at this point, it is formless and empty. And it's just this really interesting observation that God's process of creation is not instantaneous, but it's a process. That God is bringing order to chaos, to formlessness. And God's Spirit hovers over it, God speaks, and order emerges. Isn't that an interesting picture, that creation is a process which is unfolding? In the same way, verse 3, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So God is bringing order out of chaos, and he's bringing light into darkness. And the universe is comprehensible because God brings that order and that light. He makes light shine in the darkness. And light is the thing which sustains life, without which nothing can survive. But it's more than that. Because I'm struck that God is still doing these things, that he is still bringing order out of chaos and light out of darkness. I remember a moment as an undergraduate science student when I decided to take my childhood faith seriously And for me, it was like a light coming on. It was at which point the sort of chaos of my life started to find some order, and the incomprehensibility of life started to make some sense to me. I look at that as the moment where God started to bring, well, he said, let there be light. And there was light. And he can do that for you too. It is God who not only makes the universe comprehensible, but makes our lives comprehensible too. So, first, creation is not instantaneous, it is a process. Secondly, God is bringing light out of darkness and order out of chaos. And then thirdly, God looks at his creation and he says, it is good. And I don't know if you saw that's a refrain through the whole of chapter 1 of Genesis, but it's a really profound and transformative thing. That for the readers of Genesis throughout the centuries, that this belief that the world is at its foundation good is a really wonderful thing. That we don't need to be afraid of it. We can enjoy it and celebrate it because creation reflects its creator. You know, in the ancient world, when the world seemed inherently vast and threatening and unknowable, Genesis teaches people the inherent goodness of creation. And we know, of course, that's not the whole story. Genesis is going to unfold and we're going to discover that it's not as simple as that. But at its foundation, God looks at creation and says of it, it is good. And so I am struck that when you do the same, you know, when you look at the night sky or the mountains or you walk in the forests and you delight in creation, you are reflecting something of the God who made you. He, in the same way, delights in creation. And when you nurture it, and when you bring order out of chaos, when you tend creation, when you make your garden beautiful, when you protect or celebrate the beauty of creation, you are in the same way. You're doing something that God did before you. You're enacting something of God. You reflect your creator. We look at creation and acknowledging the complexity of this, but foundationally we are able to say, it is good. So this is just a beginning. But from Genesis chapter 1, we draw these three things. The first thing that Genesis tells us is that this universe is not a random event. It is not an accident. It has a creator. There was a God who was there before the beginning. A God who has acted in order to bring order out of chaos, to bring light into darkness. And as we discover, at its foundation, that creation is good. So there are these great questions. Who are we? How did we get here? What does this all mean? Why is the world as it is? And sometimes they seem like they are questions without answers, that they are out of reach. And yet the gift of this book, the gift of Genesis, as it has been throughout the centuries, is that in it God invites us to discover that there are answers to those questions. And it begins with God. Science is a wonderful thing. I delight in it. I enjoy its discoveries. I'm fascinated by it. But it is a servant, not a master. Because the one that we serve is the God who created all things. And without God, we can never make sense of the greatest questions. And if life feels chaotic for you right now, if it feels like a struggle, if it feels like it's more darkness than light, then do remember that in the beginning, God brought order out of chaos and light out of darkness, and he continues to do that. Knock and the door will be open to you. Seek and you will be found. God says, let there be light, and there will be light. Amen.